Welcome back. Today we're going to tie the multi-cam of a Brooks stone. This is a Charles Brooks fly. Was one of my absolute favorite nymph patterns, or just patterns in general when I was a kid. One of the ones where, I really started to refine some of my tying skills a little bit. It used a multitude of different materials in different fashions. Excuse me, dusty in there. And it just flat out caught fish. The concept behind this one, which I'll get into in a little bit, was what, Mr. Brooks used in a lot of his stuff. It was called tying in a round, and like I said, I'll get to that in a little bit. But to start on this one, I just have a standard, it's like your hopper hook, I guess. Your pretty popular hopper hooks. And that's what I'm going to tie this one in today, or tie this one on. This one's a Dairiki, they don't make them anymore, but if you want to go with like the Umpqua U203s or whatever it may be, something similar to that, it's going to be pretty good. Or if you want to go with just a standard nymph hook as well. But I kind of like the bend of this one. I like to have a bend on a lot of my stonefly patterns. And I'm going to tie this one a little bit darker today. Some of the ones that I used to tie a lot, the ones that I used to tie a lot were more toward the brown end of things. This one I'm going to go with some black. So for the tail on this one, I'm going to go with a black Goose Biot. And I'm just going to set those opposite of one another. If I can get them to cooperate in my hand. So I have them setting opposite of one another like so. There we go. Now you have a little bit of flare right there. Make sure, and my hands are so beat up, I am going to struggle with a fly this small today. My hands are so beat up. I may have to tie these in one at a time, to be honest with you. There we go. We got a hold of it, so I think we're going to be in good shape. And then I just want to set those in and then lock those into place. So take a couple of wraps right around there. Make sure that I'm not blocking the camera too awful bad. And then bring these back between the point and the barb of the hook. And then right there's your short little Goose Biot tails. That's probably the best angle where you can see that little V wedge section in there. So I'm just going to let those sit as they are, and then I want to take some small brass wire, copper wire, however you refer to it, and I'm going to tie that in. This is just going to be a little rib section. And I want to lengthen that out a little bit. You can go with a thicker rib if you want, by all means. I like kind of just a more subtle rib. I don't like some of the old school, like Prince nymphs or hare's ears and everything. You would see some of those ribbed, and it seemed like almost the entirety of the body was the rib, and it kind of took away from the look or the profile of the body that you were after. So I like these a little more subtle when I tie in my ribs. For the body, we're gonna go, this is just a Squirrel blend in black, and I'm just gonna make a rope on this bottom section. This has some natural materials to it. It has a little bit of an antron property. So it does make a pretty decent little rope here. And then there's a little bit of a color breakup, so it's a good overall nymph dubbing. good overall nymph dubbing. But we're just gonna make our body out of that rope, and we're gonna take it up to where we tied in our I got one section there, it's a little bit on the sparse side. There we go. We're just going to take that up to where we tied in our wire, and then we're just going to have a nice slender body on this, just taking that right up to the front and working on our taper as we go. And I could call that good right there. About, you know what, I need just probably another 2 wraps. Probably another 2 wraps there to where I'm going to be about 2/3 body, 1/3 thorax. So we'll just set that in. Like I said, this is on the darker side of what I normally time. Typically they're closer to a brown, but you get a little bit of a mix in here with some browns and blacks. You can even see a little bit of white in there in some spots. Just a nice overall look to that fly. So there you can see the body portion that we tied right there. Not a huge taper on this. I mean, obviously it's a little bit thicker up at the front, but not a huge taper. And then I want to go into, I forgot to pull these out, sorry Madison. I forgot to pull these out prior. There's Grizzly Hackle, and I need a brown. I could probably pull something off of that saddle, that'll work. So before I go and form the loop for the thorax, I want to take some hackle here and I want to tie those in. Before I do that even further, I want to tie my rib in. So I'm just counter wrapping this rib just like so. I had one spot there I didn't like too much. Just like so. Take that up to the front. There we have a counter wrapped rib on the body, and as you can see, like I was saying earlier, it's pretty subtle on the actual rib portion itself. If you go to a brassy or even a medium, it would take over for this size of a hook. Now this is going to be on the smaller side of the brook stones, especially if you're trying to imitate like a golden or a salmon. It's obviously going to be a lot bigger than this, so you would lengthen it out. Probably be up into even the size 2 to 6, honestly, for imitating that. So I just want to get a quick gauge on this. That's going to be roughly the length that I want. I want this to be a little bit exaggerated when I tie this in, or when I wrap this, I should say. I want it to be a little bit exaggerated, so I'm going to go past the hook gap a little bit. And I just want to tie that in and secure it, make sure that it's going to go the direction that I want it to. And then I'm going to find a brown stem that's going to be the same size. If anything, I'll take this brown and I'll make that a little bit bigger than the Grizzly. I kind of like when the brown overtakes the Grizzly. It's just a personal preference. It doesn't really make a difference one way or the other, to be honest. But if anything, I like the brown to be just slightly bigger or longer than the Grizzly. So I'll get those tied in. Cam, give me about 2 minutes. All right. So I'll get those tied in and then just clean up my thread wraps. I'll form a dubbing loop, which I gotta be pretty dang careful because I'm using 8/0 thread again. And I'm just going to take that right to the front, throw that in on the tool, get that out of the way, we'll half hitch, and now I'm going to work on the thorax portion, it's just going to be the same dubbing that I used before, only I want it to be a little bit thicker. Therefore, that's the reason that I want it to be a little bit pickier and a little bit thicker as well. But that's the reason for the dubbing loop. It's going to allow that to throw a little bit more of a profile and be a little bit broader than our body. So I'm just going to spin that up. Nothing real tight on that. I want a pretty loose turn on that thorax section, and you can see just 3 turns right there, and it gives me what I want, and I'm still not rushing the head on that. So then I'll take and just trim that off, get rid of that excess, set that off to the side. And then I'll just spin that up real quick to give me a nice platform to tie off my hackle. And then I'm going to take the hackle and just one wrap right in front of the next. I actually want this pretty thick, so I'm going to get like 4 to 5 wraps on this hackle. For that one I'm going to take 5. For the Grizzly I'm probably going to take 4. Because like I said, I like the brown to be a little bit more pronounced than the Grizzly. So we'll take and trim that off. Now we'll take our Grizzly and we'll work that through our brown wraps. And I'm probably just going to do 3 on this one. That's going to be good. I'm going to take 3 wraps right there. I'm going to tie that off. And let me see, because I'm not really trusting my fingers right now. I'm not going to cut that one off until I get at least a solid whip finish on there. There we go. Now I'll cut off that Grizzly. Get that out of the way, and then I'll trim up any excess that I have to and get rid of our thread as well. So there we go. That is the completed Brooks stone. But like I was saying before, the design on a lot of his patterns are based on the concept of tying in a round. And what that means is, I'm gonna have to trim that right there, it's gonna bug me. What that means is any direction or any orientation that this thing is floating in the current, you're gonna get, or the fish is gonna get the exact same look at it. This fly is the same minus the orientation of the tail, but it is the exact same all the way around. So that's the concept of tying in around. Even if it's riding upside or sideways or whatever, the fish is gonna get the same profile or the same look at what he was trying to represent. And like I said, you'll see a lot of his patterns like that. And it's a really cool concept and something that's starting to come back around a little bit with the Perdigon stuff. I don't know if it's the exact same concept or that concept is the basis for what they're doing there, but I can see a lot of his concepts in some of the modern stuff now. So a little walk back or a little trip down memory lane there for me tying this one. Like I said, this was one of my favorites as a kid and caught just an insane amount of fish on this thing over the years. But thanks as always for watching, guys. We are just about to the point to where we're gonna have, well, probably we're gonna have a structure up here in the next couple of weeks for the new shop. And probably won't be until next spring till we get everything moved out there, but it's coming along. So maybe we'll take a look at some of that stuff here as well. But some new stuff coming up over the next couple of months, and then once we get into the shop out there, it's going to be all systems go for that. But thanks as always for watching. We'll catch you on the next fly next Wednesday. Maybe we'll sprinkle in a video. in between here and there as well. Thanks, guys.